Welcome to Sit Around the Fire, the podcast dedicated to the men and women on the front lines, first responders, military personnel, and their families. I'm your host, Ashlea Dillard, a retired firefighter paramedic turned full-time mental health professional. My passion is helping the helpers. Together, we'll explore the challenges, the triumphs, and the real stories behind the uniform. In each episode, we'll talk about mental, physical, and spiritual wellness, along with the unique culture that comes along with serving in a high-stress environment. From building strong relationships to navigating the weight of the job, this is a space where we can be real, share experiences, and support one another. Whether you're on the front lines yourself or you're supporting someone who is, this is a podcast to remind you that you are not alone. So grab a seat, pull up to the fire, and let's get into it. Hey guys, welcome to Sit Around the Fire. Today I'm super excited for this episode because we are going to explore the journey of healing and transformation in our first responder community. I'm your host, Ashlea, and today we're going to dive deep into something that's really been on my mind a lot lately, the power of discovering your why. You know this, that as first responders, we get really good at answering the what and the how of our job and our lives. What needs to be done? How do we do it? But sometimes we really lose sight of the bigger question, why? Why do we keep showing up? Why do we keep pushing through the hard days? Today on this episode, we are going to explore this idea through the wisdom of some really incredible thinkers. Viktor Frankl, who found the meaning in the darkest of places, like truly darkest of places. Martin Seligman, who revolutionized how we think about happiness and get it to last within our lives. And also Dr. Joe Dispenza, where he shows us how our thoughts can literally reshape our reality. So you guys, if you're feeling burned out, you're searching for purpose, or you're just trying to make sense of the journey and what's happening, this conversation is absolutely 100% for you today. I'm super excited. Grab your seat and let's dig in. Welcome back, everybody. Ashlea here. You guys, I'm so been looking forward to kicking off this new podcast series and exploring some really powerful topics with you guys. I think that this has really been a big focus on my mind and in my practice lately, that I really feel like the universe speaks to us and says, hey, if you're working on this, that probably means other people are working on this. So in the effort of community and experience, like let's focus on this together. So I'm excited. We're going to deep dive into a lot of content today. So grab whatever your favorite beverage is and hold on for the ride because it's going to be awesome. So that being said, let's get started. I want to talk about some ideas and ways that we explore our purpose through some different lenses. Now, if you have read the book by Viktor Frankl called A Man's Search for Meaning, you're going to kind of already have a head start into some of the things that we're going to be talking about. So let's discuss who Viktor Frankl is, what's his background and his story, but we're looking at this as Viktor Frankl. He was a Jew who was sent to a variety of concentration camps and extermination camps in the 1930s when the Nazis occupied Germany. All in all, through all of his experiences, he actually ended up surviving, and which led to ultimately him writing his book, A Man's Search for Meaning. So in his writings, they're not just meant to reflect on his experiences and sufferings, but rather like the sources of his strength to survive. In his book, he reflects heavily on how fellow prisoners who lost hope, those were the ones that died first. Those were the ones that didn't make it. And the way that Frankl kept himself alive was really by cultivating hope and thoughts for the future life outside of what his current circumstances were. He comes up with this idea in theory, which is super prevalent for our lives as well, called logotherapy. And logotherapy is this idea that we find meaning in our lives that is going to be absolutely central to resilience and survival for us. Having a purpose can move us through absolutely any situation or hardship that we're going to endure. But in order to do that, we have to find meaning. We must find meaning. So he highlights different ways that we can be able to do this. And I like these three kind of examples because it encompasses an entire framework for us when we're looking at our lives. So first off, he talks about this in work. And in work, we reflect on it as doing something significant. And I think here it's really important for us to focus on incorporating our passions, our talents, our creativity into this, because if you really enjoy flipping burgers at McDonald's and making people meals and getting them things, that fill their bellies and put a smile on their face, then do the best job at flipping burgers that you possibly can. If you enjoy being a firefighter or a police officer or in the military, then do the very best at that by using your passions with it. And I think this is also what helps us move through our careers without hitting that wall of burnout, is when you find your niche or you find your passion and you really hold on to that, that's going to continue to give us your purpose. That's going to continue to help give you your why in what you need to do. Now, moving forward, we talk about in work. Now we're going to talk about what this looks like in love, how we find our meaning in life through love. And love, he reflects on as caring for another. And this is really where we can find strength in channeling our suffering that we are experiencing into a state of compassion and support for others. You guys, it's amazing when we stop focusing so much on the suffering or the negative that we have going on in our lives, and we turn it towards compassion and support for others, that our mindset shifts so drastically, and the way we move through life, it really truly changes. So looking at how we can show up for other people in the midst of what we're going on, but using love and compassion and support as the cornerstone of this. The third principle he reflects on is courage during difficult times. And this is a big one, I think, for all of us. Is it's very, very easy for us to get wrapped up in the mindset, especially the ego-driven mindset that wants to pull us into those states of fear and sadness and anger. But if we can have a courage to move through these situations, to move through these experiences of life, we can transcend those negative emotions. We can live in a better state, an open state where we're accepting love and compassion and help from others. This is so relatable, you guys, to the first responder community, is because we have to find a purpose in our service despite the hardship. And I think this was a very big lesson that perhaps I didn't learn as early on as I could have. But I know that so many of us have run some very terrible traumatic calls. And for me, some of those big traumatic calls often included kids. And anytime a kid is involved, it automatically adds a very high level of stress and tension. So after running some of these really, truly terrible kids calls, pediatric calls, I often found myself thinking, like, are you kidding me? Like, this is really what we're going to do for forever. Like, this is what we get to see. This is how the world operates. Truly some of the darkest elements of what humanity brings. And I really had to challenge myself and reflect back on it. It's a lot easier to reflect outside of the moment than it is sometimes within it. But reflecting back and remembering is we have to show up with a purpose in what we're doing, how we are living our lives, how we are serving. You guys, what if I told you that the key to overcoming anything in life starts with one simple question? What's your why? Your mindset shapes your reality. Your thoughts can fuel resilience, or they can truly hold you back. In this brand new series coming up, Mindset to Manifestations, we're diving deep into how you can shift your state, break free of fear and stress, and truly create the life that you want. In our first episode, we're talking about getting to know your why, because Viktor Frankl said, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." We'll explore the science behind mindset, the power of thoughts, and how people like Frankl and Dr. Joe Dispenza prove that what we focus on can literally change our lives. So if you're ready to step into a new level of clarity and purpose, join me. New episode drops on Monday. Don't miss it. Subscribe now, follow along, and let's start changing our state together. And that is to make a positive impact and be the light wherever we can. So in the terrible situations that come up is, how can we see the light in some of these? How can we find our purpose? Knowing that we did the best possible job. Our skills were the best possible skills that we could use in this call or this scenario or this situation. But we really had to let it go after that. I learned this lesson later as well, towards the end of my career, when I was working on my own work and found that I was carrying so much of what the past in my work had brought me, and things that I had never thought about in years, calls and situations that I hadn't thought about for a very long time. And it's a very stark reminder that the body does keep score when it comes to these things. And I had to choose to unload my backpack and not carry these things with me any longer, but release them into the light, as I call it, and be at peace. And the message very clearly in this time of healing for me was, I did the very best possible job that I could in this call, in this moment, in this situation. And even if the outcome was negative or dire or not ideal, I had to be okay with knowing that I did the best possible things that I could for this situation, and really letting that go and moving that into the light and not holding on to it, not going into the hamster wheel of thoughts of what could I have done better? Like this was my fault. I messed up on this, or I'm owning this outcome, is knowing that I did the very possible best that I could, and I can be okay with that. And I think that is very much part of this finding purpose in our service despite the hardship that we see that's going on. Now, that kind of brings us to another spot here where we talk about suffering as a path to meaning. And I'm sure if I could see all of your faces, you would probably be rolling your eyes at this point and be like, are you freaking kidding me? We're going to talk about how my suffering actually has a meaning to it. And yes, we actually are. So suffering in itself is actually extremely meaningless. What happens in these scenarios in our lives is that we give our suffering meaning in the way that we think about it and we respond to it. So the suffering itself is just an experience, but how we think about it, how we respond to it, that is actually what gives it the meaning. And Frankl really nails this on the head when he says, suffering ceases to be suffering at the moment that it finds a meaning. And guys, let that sit in and listen to it again. Suffering ceases to be suffering at the moment it finds a meaning. We always know that there's forces beyond our control that can take away everything from us. Everything from our mental, our physical, all of our accomplishments, our accolades, all of our physical things. It can be taken away in an instant. And I'm sure all of us have seen this happen either in our own lives or in others' lives as well. But everything that we possess can be taken away. But what cannot be taken away is your freedom to choose how you will respond to the situation. That is something that no one, no chief, no administration, no family member, no spouse, no one can take away your freedom to choose how you will respond to the situation. Your struggles can actually be the biggest catalyst to your growth when you choose to find meaning in it. And that means sometimes looking for the meaning, wiping the mud out of your eyes, and actually looking at where can I find meaning in this experience that's happening to me, in this suffering. And if you guys have read, I'm not sure where we're at with this, but Harold Kushner's book, When Bad Things Happen to Good People, he also reminds us that asking the question, why me, isn't as powerful as asking the question, what now? So instead of reflecting back on why is this happening to me? Why is this situation my story? Why am I going through this suffering? Why am I going through this loss? Why am I going through this difficult season? Whatever that looks like, finances, relationships, health, work, children, any of the things you fill in the blank. Instead of asking that question, why me? Ask the question, what now? And the question to reflect on really here is, can we be at peace with accepting that suffering is not a punishment, but it's actually just a part of life? And when we assign a purpose to our suffering, that will give it a meaning, a positive meaning for us, rather than some shitty thing that's actually happening to us. Now, listen up. Key takeaway here, you guys. Instead of trying to explain your suffering, I want you to focus on how you can shape it to your purpose. How can you use the experience, the season, the difficulty, the hardship that you're in right now? How can you give it a purpose and use it moving forward? This is where I use this quote so much. I can't even tell you how many times. And if you know me, you probably have heard this quote before. It's from the man himself, Viktor Frankl. He says, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." And we have to come up with what our why is to move us through these seasons of suffering, or this really any season, whether it's suffering or it is happiness, joy, any of them. You have to have a why, because the hows are not going to be easy, right? The hows are not going to always come smoothly, but we need to have a why. You have to have a why to be able to do this. I want to transition now into talking about Martin Seligman's positive psychology. And if you didn't roll your eyes already and maybe sigh pretty deeply and thinking Ashley, this is ridiculous. We're talking about all the sugar-coated things is that's okay. I'm fine with it. I'm here for it. But positive psychology, you guys, is a real thing. And Seligman's concept of authentic happiness, it really emphasizes the cultivation of strength and virtues, which, remembering, happiness is going to lay the foundation for your positive psychology to actually happen, and it's going to give you a framework for understanding and cultivating a meaningful life. He argues that true fulfillment comes from building a life that extends beyond temporary pleasure. And we're going to dive deep into this, which I'm so excited for. But hear that again, is true fulfillment comes from building a life that extends beyond temporary pleasure. We cannot have this idea of temporary happiness. We have to have a good existing baseline. There's 3 dimensions here, you guys, when we talk about what happiness actually looks like. And we think about the pleasant life, the good life, and the meaningful life. So starting with the pleasant life, we look at this as seeking pleasure. It involves maximizing positive emotions where we can actually enjoy life's pleasures and avoiding pain, ideally. This is the concept around that instant gratification. So putting the dollar into the vending machine and getting a candy bar out in return. It's about good food, entertainment, and physical comfort. But hear me out, because I do not want you to misunderstand that, oh, Ashlea said just go for all the seeking pleasure tactics of life here. That's not what I'm saying. So there is a limitation here, is knowing, being aware that pleasure alone does not create deep fulfillment for you. It is going to fade over time. It doesn't last. It's the dopamine hit, the temporary dopamine, this feels really, really good type response. There's a really good book out there if you're looking for some added resources here as well too, called The Dopamine Nation, which is really interesting when it kind of highlights like how our culture is become addicts to the dopamine fix. So relating this back here is remembering this pleasure alone is not going to create a deep fulfillment for you. It's going to fade over time, but it's important to have these pleasant life type experiences so that we can use it as part of the tier and when we're building our overall happiness baseline levels. This could be something so simple, you guys, as a really stinking good cup of coffee in the morning. It could be petting your dog, or seeing how excited your dog gets when you get home from work, or taking a walk outside, making some of your favorite foods, or going to experience a new restaurant. Any of these things, those can all be part of the pleasant life, that seeking pleasure type dimension. Now, another aspect that he reflects on is called the good life. And the good life is going to include engagement and strengths. This level is all about identifying and using your unique strengths to create flow states. And I love flow states, and I love talking about flow states. So flow states, for those who are maybe unfamiliar or looking for a different definition, flow states are those moments where you're fully absorbed in what you do. It is somewhat hard to explain until you've actually been in it, but when you know it, then it's really easy to identify when you are in it. So when we think of using our signature strengths, things like creativity, kindness, perseverance, these are going to show up in our work and our hobbies and our relationships. This is where we are going to experience such a deep satisfaction. And I was just having a conversation with somebody the other day about flow states and what this looks like, and introducing this idea that was a new concept for him. And I'll explain it in my way, and then I'll explain it in some other ways. So for one of the ways that I know that for sure 10 times out of 10 I can tap into the flow state is actually for me on the treadmill. I don't know why. I never used to like being on the treadmill, but something now where when I get on the treadmill and I get in the right zone, it's like the flow state. It's just happening. It's just being fully present and absorbed in what I do. Now, we talked about me and this other guy about, okay, how do you see when the flow state actually shows up for you? Look for this, you guys, in your interactions with one another. So when you are in the situation where you're hanging out with either a spouse, a partner, or a close friend, notice how you're showing up and absorbed by the conversation. So do you have, consistent eye contact that's happening? Is the dialogue, the conversation going back and forth and spurring one another on? Have you noticed that time kind of seems to pass away effortlessly? Are you disconnected from your phone or any other distractions that are around? Is being 100% fully present in that moment is the flow state. You're completely fully absorbed in what you do. Another example of this, you guys can look like a first responder who finds fulfillment not just in the job, but in solving problems. I worked with a captain who was really his brain was all about finding solutions to these really complex problems. And you could see him on the kitchen table. He would be writing with dry erase markers of all these ideas and thoughts in how could we solve this problem, or if this scenario came up, what were the extrication tools that we needed? What was the tech team going to have to get deployed to do? How are we going to do patient care in that scenario? Is you could literally just see him light up over the sense of He knew exactly what his strength was, and he was super excited. He got into that flow state of being able to use his strengths to solve that problem. Now, let's transition and talk about the meaningful life. So this is the third element to Seligman's kind of idea of how to create this authentic happiness. Meaningful life is going to reflect back on purpose and service. Now, the deepest level of happiness comes from serving a greater purpose beyond oneself, whether through faith, community, or meaningful work. AKA, you live a life that is in service to other people, with caveat, of course, with boundaries. We don't want to be a bunch of fawners around here, but we know that serving a greater purpose means you have a job to do in this world in your time while you're here. Studies actually show that people who align their actions with a sense of purpose experience long-term well-being. They know that they have a reason, a why. They have a why as to what they're here for, what their purpose is, moving them through all experiences that life brings them. An example, you guys, looks like a commitment to show up for yourself and then show up for the job. There's a balance between protecting and serving others while protecting and serving yourself. It's knowing that you have a why and that it permeates into all areas of your life. You show up so much differently in that. So there's a really cool model I like to use here, and it's actually from Seligman's theory for lasting happiness. It's called the PERMA model, and that's PERMA model. So P is going to stand for positive emotions. This looks like cultivating gratitude, love, joy, optimism. That's our first step. E, engagement. So finding flow. We just talked about what flow state looks like. Finding flow in activities that challenge and fulfill us, keep us driving, moving forward. R stands for relationships. That's deep social connections and strong support networks. 100% crucial if you're going to make it. M is for meaning. That's contributing to something greater than oneself, living out that purpose, right? And then A stands for accomplishment, setting and achieving meaningful goals through mindset and manifestation. So the PERMA model of well-being really does give us a framework of how do we do this? How do we build the authentic happiness lifestyle that's not that constant up and down, like I'm happy, I'm sad, I'm, all over the board, is giving us that kind of model, that framework to work off. So some questions I have for you to reflect upon are, what are my signature strengths? Get really familiar, get really intimate with discovering what are my signature strengths? What are my strengths lending to the purpose that I'm serving now? Second question is, where do I feel most engaged? So again, taking an inventory, looking at your life, where are you showing up the best? Where does that flow state kick in? Where does that spark really, really show up for you? And 3, how can I use my struggles to serve a greater purpose? And I will share a very personal story with you guys here on this one. So dive into a community where education meets connection. By joining our email list, you're not just signing up for updates or another message sent to your spam box. You're becoming part of a vibrant first responder family dedicated to growth and support. We're thrilled to announce that subscribers will receive exclusive access to our brand new worksheet, Mindsets to Mantras, designed to help you transform your mental state through intentional growth. This isn't just another piece of paper or another worksheet for you to complete. It's your first step towards mastering your own mindset. This worksheet is actually going to kick off our exciting new podcast series, Mindset and Manifestation, where we'll explore how to harness your own thoughts for real-world impact. Whether you're looking to improve your resilience on the job or just maybe find some balance in your personal life, this series is tailored for you. So don't miss out. Sign up for our email list now and elevate your journey as a first responder with tools, stories, and community support that really truly resonate. rewind back to Fire Academy, and I went into Fire Academy with very little to no experience on the fire side. I had a good chunk of EMS time. I knew the medical side of things, but fire, I had no idea what I was getting into. A lot of my old crew would joke, even still today, of like when they would ask me to go get a Halligan from the rig, and I looked at them with like the widest eyes and said, I don't even know what you're talking about. What is a Halligan? And I'm sure they thought, oh Lord, she's in for a very, very fun experience. But when I walked into Fire Academy, I had no idea what really I was getting into. And a lot of the things that we did in the training that we did, I had never done before. So we think about confined mazes and pig crates and all of that stuff was all 100% new. And what happens when you don't have a framework, or you have what I learned much later, which is a story for another time, is how unprocessed trauma is going to show up in these high stress states. So for me, there was residual trauma from some things that had happened that left me in a similar physiological state within those confined spaces and those mazes that sent me into a very strong protective output. And it was difficult to be able to understand what was happening and why it was happening, and then still be able to function and get the drill done or move through it. Thank you to people who supported me within that environment and helped me get tapped into resources that I needed to go work out and investigate and finish the process of trauma, so that I knew that I could do the job and I could do it well, and I could learn how to process future trauma that was coming up. One of a really amazing person that I worked with who saw me as a patient gave me this mindset to live by. And I remember it so, like I can tap right back into it today, is as I was sitting in his office and we were in our one of our therapy sessions, he told me, he said, like, Ashley, you've got to have a why to get through this. You've got to discover and really get tapped into what is your why in completing this, because somebody is going to need your help on the other side. And that, you guys, was like the biggest, if there was the biggest light bulb you could have ever turned on in my mind, that is exactly what happened. Is I was like, holy crap, you're right. Like, I have to get through this. I have to be able to complete these really annoying things that I did not enjoy doing, is because there was a purpose in the struggle. Somebody on the other side is going to need my help after this. And that framework changed everything. And as first responders, you guys, we thrive in the good life, right? We thrive in the engagement through our work, but we sometimes struggle through the meaningful life. And that's when we see burnout really setting in, really getting hard to show up and continue to live out our purpose and serve and do our jobs when we hit that burnout level. But we have to redefine why we do what we do. And we have to have the support method for being able to do that. So getting really, really dialed into why you're showing up to do the job. And do not allow yourself to fall back on the classic mentality of, I'm doing this to help others. I'm doing this to serve my communities. I want you to get really, really personal about your why and why you're choosing to show up and put on that uniform every day and do what you do. You cannot use someone else's answer. You cannot use someone else's why. That is not going to sustain you to get through your career. You've got to have your own personal why as to why you're going to choose to do the job and why you're going to choose to live your most healthy, balanced, flourishing, thriving life on the other side as well. Dr. Seligman has a really great quote that I want to put into here, you guys, for you to hear, is authentic happiness derives from raising the bar for yourself, not rating yourself against others. Your life is going to look different than other people's life, and get okay with that. Like, be okay with accepting that your life is not going to look like everybody else's life on social media or what they're talking about. As your life is going to be your life. And authentic happiness derives from raising the bar for yourself, not rating yourself against others. You're going to live a very miserable, non-authentic happiness type life if you choose to live in a constant state of comparison, jealousy, resentment, all those things that go in line with rating yourself against other people. Let's transition now and talk about Joe Dispenza, or Dr. Joe Dispenza. He's like really, really fascinating. If you haven't taken time to check out any of his stuff, I encourage you to. He's got a lot of really good things to say, especially short YouTubes and stuff like that. But he really is highlighting a focus specifically on the power of the mind and how it shapes reality and health through specifically neuroplasticity and the ability to rewire our thoughts and emotions to create a whole new reality. And if you've listened to the podcast so far, if you're new, welcome, and we're so excited that you're here. But if you've listened to it before, you know that I'm a real nerd when it comes to the nervous system, to neuroplasticity, to making new neural networks and new thoughts and patterns and behaviors through the rewiring of the network, essentially. So his work very closely aligns to the work that I love to do and the work that I truly believe in. So it's very, very applicable to us as first responders, because when we face high stress environments, trauma, emotional exhaustion, is we have to have a way to change, or a concept of how we're going to change our thoughts to create a new personal reality. And I really think that this is the golden ticket into how to have a healthy career as a first responder, how to have healthy home lives and families and relationships as first responders, is that using your thoughts, using that neuroplasticity to create a new reality for yourself. When we talk about rewiring the brain for resilience, this really is that neuroplasticity part. And his Dispenza's core idea here is our thoughts create our reality. Now, what does this mean and how do we understand this? Is the brain is constantly adapting based on our thoughts, emotions, and our experiences. It's that taking in of information, making those index cards, this is what's happened before, and how do I put that together in some form of reality that our brain is creating. For first responders, being exposed to really high stress, life and death situations, that can rewire the brain for chronic stress and hypervigilance, whether you're aware of it or not. Over time, this creates kind of that feedback loop of anxiety, burnout, and PTSD. When we think about those of us who go to restaurants or go to places and you have a hard time sitting with your back to the door, that is that rewiring of your brain of, it's not safe for me to sit with my back to the door. I need to be turned around, creating that hypervigilant chronic stress type states. The problem is, you guys, here, when we get in these loops of especially anxiety and burnout and PTSD or complex PTSD, the series of events happening over time, which is really where we fall into that rhythm as first responders, is we get stuck in the same patterns, thoughts, and behaviors. So our default way, the default mode network, becomes the energy efficient, we call it like the express toll way of doing things to these neurotags, these thoughts, patterns, behaviors. It's the way that we always do things. And you really like underlining, capitalizing, putting an emphasis on the word always. It's our default way of going back to. And we're caught in that constant loop, and it constantly gets reaffirmed and stronger and more resilient, making it much harder to move out of those states. When we think about applying this, as we think about as first responders in our community, we can break the cycle, but we have to consciously choose new thoughts and emotional responses. And again, you've heard me speak to this before, is you can think it all day, right? We can think, our brain can think it, and yeah, that sounds good. I'll listen to, like 1,200 self-help podcasts and read all these books about how to change your mind and all that stuff. But you actually have to consciously do it for yourself. You have to actually do the work, which, surprise, that's where you're at. You have to actually do work. This is going to happen through the neuroplasticity side, through the rewiring, but it's going to take mindfulness, meditation, self-awareness, all of those things, along with nervous system work. They can rewire your brains for a different state. You can experience more calmness, more resiliency, more emotional control, but you have to do the work. Like you can't read the book or listen to the podcast and just think that that's absorbed into your system and now that's going to be the new way of doing things. You have to actually put it into action. You got to actually do something. So some practical tools or ways you can do that is through visualization, right? Visualization exercises where we mentally rehearse calm, controlled responses to these high stress events. So if you think about, and mental rehearsal is the way to do a lot of this, right? When it works towards mindset and manifestation, is you're going to prepare the brain to react differently when you're faced with these real life crises. So if you're preparing for or thinking about how am I going to respond to this call differently next time? How do I mentally rehearse being calm or controlled? And it doesn't just have to apply at work either. This can apply definitely 100% at home as well. Because let's face it, you guys, home can be those high stress environments as well, not just work. Or maybe it's opposite for you. Home is the high stress environment. Work is just work. But you can practice that visualization so that you have a different way of doing things. He puts in a really good quote, which I think is really, really important for you to hear, is your thoughts have consequences so great that they create your reality. If you go into, let's say you've had a conversation with your spouse about money and the finances, first of all, we can normalize, like most people, talking about finances and money can be extremely stressful. So if we think about, okay, we need to have a conversation around our budget, or we need to have a conversation around this, is if you can visualize staying calm and controlled in that high stress conversation, your brain is going to be so much more willing to react differently in that state. But again, you're going to have to do the work. You're going to have to be mindful about where you are. You're going to have to use your other tools like meditation and self-awareness and nervous system drills, all of those things. It's a great tool to use, especially if you use cold therapy too. You can do some of this visualization within your cold therapy practice, which is really super freaking helpful. Now, overcoming trauma and breaking the stressive cycle is something that can definitely be tapped into in this mentality. The body can't heal in a state of survival. We know that that's a core idea, a core mentality. As first responders, we operate in constant fight or flight mode. That is going to chronically release levels of cortisol and adrenaline for us that are going to damage the body and the brain over time. These, what are designed to be very acute stress hormones, were not meant for chronic use. So when we're constantly in that fight-flight state, that high sympathetic nervous system, it's going to damage the body and the brain. Like there's no other way around it. It's like there's tons of science, research, data behind it. Like you're damaging lots of different elements within your body and your brain. This is going to lead to chronic anxiety, like chronic sleep issues, emotional numbness, and the effects of PTSD and CPTSD. It's a fact. It's what happens, right? So you can practice techniques that are going to help you move out of your sympathetic nervous system. And if you haven't gone back and listened to the episodes on fight and flight and freeze and fawn, I would recommend you going back to do that to get a better picture and idea of maybe some sneaky behaviors that are showing up within these that are actually causing these maladaptive behaviors for you to show up. But there's tactics to tap into, you guys, like breath work, meditation, gratitude practice. You can shift your state from stress, that survival mode mentality, to a state of balance and healing. And this is not just woo-woo, like, ooh, this, like, no, there's real data and science behind this. I'm not BSing you. This is real. But you're going to have to, again, put the work in and practice it. Heart-centered breathing is something we talked about here before, but it's that deep, slow breathing while you're focusing on gratitude or a calming memory that's going to signal the nervous system to relax. This is a really powerful one, you guys, and you can do this in a couple of different ways. You can pick a list of people that you want to focus on, perhaps, and you can't just pick all the people that you like and that you want to send gratitude to. You have to pick a mixture of both. So even those people that you would really like to not send gratitude to, focus on those folks as well. You can also let this organically come up for you as you're doing this practice. So let's say you're sitting down, you're doing some heart-centered breathing. So that deep breaths in through the nose and those really long, nice exhales out through the mouth. As you do that, you can let pictures or names of people run through your mind. And as they do, actively sending them gratitude, that thank you. Thank you for putting this person in my life. Thank you for allowing me to experience the lesson that this person is giving me in my life, is actively sending that gratitude towards those people. This is a game changer, you guys. I talk a lot about gratitude, and I know it's like the hype thing right now, but it is legit. It's really, really true. And this can totally shift from that survival mode into that state where you can actually heal. There's another method you can do here as well, more of like a body scan. So body scan, there's tons of different apps and resources for you to tap in for this too. You can use Insight Timer, the Calm app, Headspace. You can look it up on YouTube too, but getting something where you can do a body scan meditation, that's going to help to release any trauma that might be stored in the body by bringing awareness to tension and consciously letting it go. Hey everyone, I want to take a moment to talk about our latest online workshop that's been a real game changer for many. We just wrapped up an incredible session on communication for first responder couples. This workshop delves into the unique challenges faced by both couples, where one or both partners are in high-stress emergency response roles. We cover strategies to strengthen your bond, manage stress, and communicate effectively when every moment counts. If you missed this one, don't worry. All of our courses are available for registration on the website. Whether you're looking to enhance your professional skills or manage your personal life a little bit better, we have workshops that are tailored just for you. Head over to the site, check out what's available, and sign up for the next session. You'll find practical insights and supportive communities that understand the life of first responders. Don't miss out on this opportunity to grow both personally and professionally. We've got 2 really amazing workshops coming up, both in March and April. Check out the website, get registered, and I'll see you there. Now, keep in mind that this doesn't have to be a huge orchestrated event either. You can do this very easily after a call, take a quick walk, be outside in nature, or do that body scan as you're driving back to your station or wherever you're going. Is you can do these really quick little body scans to 100% help you move any trauma that might still be there, to help finish out the process of this. Consciously letting it go. That's a huge thing. incorporating in you did the best you possibly could, all of your skills, everything that went into it, and letting it go. The mind-body connection, I love this. I love this. I don't even have a better way to say it. But the mind-body connection is healing through thought, which is a real thing. It's so awesome how much power that we do hold in our mind. And Dr. Dispenza says, where you place your attention is where you place your energy. And I think this could be a real gut check moment for all of us here, is if you're going to focus your energy on something that's negative happening within your life, that's where all of your energy is going to go. And scientific research shows that your thoughts and emotions directly influence your body's biochemistry. And this is so cool that this is finally becoming so mainstream now, as they're showing how much stress and the thoughts and emotions and all those things literally are having a physiological impact on us. They're impacting our biochemistry. And when us as first responders, or anybody really who replays traumatic memories, our bodies are reliving the stress response as if the event were happening again. So the chronic inflammation that we experience, the burnout, the illness, this is where we're seeing tons of cardiovascular instances, cancers, all those things. This is because our bodies are still having the same physiological response, and it's causing those chronic states to show up over and over and over again. It's that loop that we talked about, and now we're cascading the effects on our biochemistry and our physiological impact that's happening. We have to start shifting the focus on how we can actually empower our thoughts, our gratitude, and future possibilities so that we can help recondition the state of our nervous system. We're going to dive more into this in the next couple episodes, which I'm really stoked about. But for now, I'm just going to leave you with that little nugget. But remembering that you got the power to do this. You have the power to heal through your thoughts. You can change your state actually through your thoughts. There's some really cool ways in order to do this, is when we think about future self-visualization. I want you to visualize yourself as calm, resilient, and thriving. You're going to actually, when you do this actively and very intentionally, you're reprogramming your subconscious mind for that reality. And next episode, we're actually going to talk about how to do this a lot more in depth in what this actually means when we talk about mindset and manifestation. But again, you're reprogramming your subconscious. Like you're shifting your reality. You're changing your thoughts and your perceptions on all of this that is going to have a huge impact. The letting go technique, we've spoke to this a little bit before, but instead of replaying the trauma, you're actively choosing to shift your focus to healing, gratitude, and personal growth. So instead of putting energy into the negative, is really focusing on how can I heal from this? What's the gratitude? Gratitude, we spoke to this before, will move you through any situation. Gratitude and saying thank you. Thank you for this lesson. Thank you for this experience. Thank you for this purpose. Whatever it is using that as your letting go technique. Finally, you guys, we have to create a new identity beyond the job. I have this conversation with so many people, and I will be the first to raise my hand and I'm right there with you. It is so easy for us to become addicted to our emotional states, right? And many of us as first responders identify solely with our roles, with our I'm a paramedic, I'm a firefighter, I'm a police officer. That identification with that uniform or that badge is going to lead to some emotional disconnection outside of work. If you don't have an identity or something that you've been investigating or working on is when you retire or you get injured, you may feel like you're lost without your profession. You're lost without doing that job that you used to do. And so many times I hear people talk about that. I am a cop or I am a firefighter. And reminding ourselves, just like to broaden the scope a little bit more, is you could say like, I am sad. I am sick. I am a wife. I am whatever. Fill in the blank. We do this a lot in a lot of different ways as we very much hold on to these identities of things that we've grasped onto. But what I want you guys to hear and realize is that you are really, truly none of those things. Those are all just parts and pieces of you that build into the uniqueness of who you are. But at your very core and center is you are none of those things. You are not. It is impossible. You can't be that. You have to come to grips of finding an identity that doesn't exist within a job that you're doing, both literally on the job or at home or outside of it, a hobby, anything. You can't identify with that. You have to create a new identity that extends beyond the job title. This can be a real reality check and a shakeup to a lot of us because I know for me, I spent a lot of years very dialed into everything as being a firefighter medic and doing all kinds of things outside of work that followed along and repurposed or gave, more meaning to what that was. But it's been my own journey and come a long ways of unwinding myself from those identities and really getting to know who the authentic self is. There's some very practical tools you can use in this as well of reflecting on, and I particularly like journaling. Journaling isn't for everybody, but it's something you can try, and if it doesn't work for you, that's fine, but there's lots of other ways to do this. But to reflect upon, like, who am I outside of my career? Like, what do I have outside of the job? What is my identity? Who is my authentic self? And I want you to visualize imagining a fulfilled, purpose-driven life beyond the uniform, knowing that that is a part of you. It's a very important part that you've worked very hard for, and I get that. I can relate to that. But imagining what your fulfilled, purpose-driven life beyond that looks like, because a reality check here, it could be gone tomorrow. That could, if it's based on injury or something happening, is that identity could be shifted tomorrow. And it's so important if you want to have a healthy work-life balance that you start to identify, what is this life beyond the badge? What is this life beyond the uniform? So I've thrown a lot of information at you guys, and I'm super glad that you've been here for the ride of it all. But let's talk about some very focused elements that I want you to take away from this. I want you to focus on how you can take action either through journaling, meditating, discussing your why with someone. It's all very well and done when we think about these things and we reflect on them. It's a whole nother thing when you bring the accountability piece into play. So I want you to be brave, and I want you to be reflective, and I want you to come up with what your why is going to be, and to feel safe enough to share that with a trusted friend or a mentor, somebody who you can talk to about this. Because it's way too important. You've got to do it. You've got to come up with a why so you can get through what you need to. You've got to have your purpose. You've got to work on authentic happiness. Viktor Frankl has this very awesome quote that I want to leave you with here is, when we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. think about what this looks like and means for you. I want you to really, really let this sit in, is that when you can't change a situation, when you are in the midst of suffering, is that you are now challenged. You're going to have to change your relationship to your suffering. You're going to have to look at things differently. You're going to have to see how you can find a blessing within the experience that you're going through, how you can find gratitude towards that. Give your suffering some kind of meaning that is actually going to help serve you and to serve others. I'm so glad that you guys joined me for today. So happy to share some of my heart with you, and really, really super excited for the next few weeks to come. I hope that you stay engaged, that you share your thoughts on social media. You can share your why stories with me, reach out for any further discussion, but share this episode with those in your life who you think could use it. Is part of why we're here. Serve your purpose. Excited to see you for the next episode, you guys. Go out and be well. Look forward to chatting with you around the fire again very soon. Thanks for joining us around the fire today. We appreciate you taking the time to listen, and I hope that you found value in our conversation. If you enjoyed this episode, please give us a like and share it with your community. Remember, we'll be sitting around the fire again soon, so keep an eye out for more episodes where we continue to explore the stories and insights of first responders. Until next time, stay safe and keep the fire burning.